Our top story this hour, rising tensions and strained relations as China tells Barack Obama not to meet with the Dalai Lama. China is already on the outs with the U.S. after President Obama announced the sale of $6.3 billion worth of arms to Taiwan. Joining me to talk about China's warning to the U.S. is political economist and author Ray Lauda. So we're going to be talking to Mr. Lauda about these rising tensions with China. Obviously, China and the United States have had a lot of discussions regarding Google. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton had a lot of things to say about that. And it looks like the times could be changing for China and the United States. Could it be China now that is threatening the United States with sanctions? This could be a major shift for the world. And what could this mean for the future with the United States? What kind of impact could this have? And is this really a big deal for American companies? There have been many reports that American companies will be facing severe sanctions from China because of that arms deal with Taiwan. And now, just to make matters worse, President Obama will be meeting with the Dalai Lama, and Chinese officials are not happy. In a news conference that took place in Beijing not too long ago, a Chinese official said, quote, "We will take corresponding measures to make the relevant countries realize their mistakes." And joining me now to talk about this is Raymond Lauda, live in our New York studio. Mr. Lauda, thank you so much for joining me. Well, first of all, I want to ask you, it's interesting because usually the United States is the one putting or threatening sanctions on other countries, but it looks like the times are changing. Is this the beginning of a new era in the world, or maybe more specifically for United States-China relations?
Well, I think it's important to understand some backdrop here. The U.S.-China relationship is very much a hinge of international economic and strategic relations. And over the last 20 years, there's been a symbiotic relationship between the United States and China. That is, the United States, its growth over the last 20 years has been very much finance-led and credit-driven. And there's been a vast financialization of the U.S. economy. Financial profits accounted for only about 20% of total corporate profits in 1980 and then soared to 45% in 2004. China, on the other hand, has emerged as the workshop, sweatshop for international capitalism. And this has been very crucial to the growth of the U.S. economy and the profitability of the U.S. economy. Walmart, for instance, if you take all its subcontractual relationships in China, represents the largest private exporter in the aggregate, out of China. And this is the kind of situation that's existed. And China has actually, through the course of this inflow of foreign capital, through the development of these sweatshops, these export processing zones that are driven by super exploitation, people working 60, 70 hours a week, being subjected to horrific working conditions, China has emerged as a major power now. It's the third or second largest economy in the world, depending on the data, and it is now exercising a lot more leverage in the world economy. It's been building up its military. It's been investing in raw materials in Latin America, in Africa, in Central Asia, and there's now a greater threat to U.S. hegemony.
That's right. You mentioned the leverage, and that's exactly what I wanted to talk about. I mean, what does the future look like between the United States and China? Will the United States have to start consulting China before it makes those big decisions, like who to sell arms to?
Well, that's what I'm saying. I think there's both, there's a symbiotic relationship between the two countries. They're both capitalist countries. China is now a rising power. It's rising in economic and geopolitical strength in the context of the decline of U.S. economic power. But the U.S. is still the dominant imperial power in the world, economically and militarily, even though its economic strength has, as I said, declined. So this is giving rise to tremendous frictions. I mean, the frictions between these two countries have to be understood against, the backdrop of the shifting fault lines, if you will, in the world economy, the emergence of new centers of economic power that are challenging the U.S. and increasingly challenging it geoeconomically and geopolitically. And we're seeing this struggle over issues of currency and trade. And you have these kinds of new configurations of power, a longer-term process emerging, and at the same time, all of this is being exacerbated by the current economic crisis. So, there's a question of France, for instance, saying that the U.S. dollar will no longer be able to play the same role. The renminbi is playing a much more important, influential role in East Asia. So you're seeing these new blocks of economic power contending and vying with each other. And the United States is trying to assert and reassert its dominant position.
Well, Mr. Lada, I want to thank you so much for joining me, and we'll certainly continue to follow how all this tension will play out for the relationship with the United States and China.